So this is only going to be a small short video because I actually feel like my time and my energy would be better spent on something else. But I also did just want to talk about this, just kind of more for like, just for funsies, and just to kind of add, have a little bit of conversation about the Sabrina Carpenter's album cover. I was in bed earlier. It is 4 p.m. on Sunday, and I wasn't really doing anything, and in between reading my book and drinking tea, I was on TikTok and I was having a little scroll, and I've seen so many opinions on Sabrina Carpenter's album cover, and that's what I just kind of wanted to talk about today and hear some of the opinions on both sides. So I have a few TikToks that I wanted to I haven't seen most of these TikToks I haven't seen, and I wanted to react maybe, and then I was like, ooh, maybe I can do a stupid video where we kind of react to the videos together. So if you haven't seen Sabrina Carpenter's new album, it's called Man's Best Friend, and the front cover of the album is her on her hands and knees. She's reaching one hand forward. I don't know if she's touching this man's leg or she's just kind of reaching towards it, but there's a man standing over her, and he's holding her hair, or like pulling her hair up, and she is looking at the camera. Obviously she's so pretty, she looks gorge, and people have a lot to say about this album cover. Also, I've seen people talk about the fact that the album is called Man's Best Friend. Man's best friend is obviously a dog, so people are like, she's comparing herself to a dog. And then also a female dog is a bitch, so people are saying she's calling herself a bitch, or referencing her like self to being a bitch or something. I don't really know. I've seen, again, this was not a very well researched video at all. This is just me after scrolling on TikTok. So my initial opinions on this have kind of been a little bit varied, I guess. So I'll just give my opinions on this first, and then we'll watch a few TikToks, and then we'll talk about some of those TikToks. So I feel like Sabrina Carpenter is doing what Sabrina Carpenter has been doing, which is cosplaying and portraying this time gone by romanticized Americana, kind of the same way that Lana Del Rey used to do. I don't even know if Lana Del Rey still does that. I don't really know. All I know is she's a Zionist, and and I don't care about anything she does anymore. She married some like alligator hunter or something in America, which is like, whatever, girl, live your life, what the fuck ever. So she, obviously Lana Del Rey, used to do the kind of Jackie Kennedy thing, like the 1960s, the 1950s American, again, just totally romanticizing this like period of time where things were not that good, especially for women, and especially for people of color. But yeah, I feel like Sabrina Carpenter, this isn't shocking from Sabrina. I saw people being like, have you seen her album cover? It's unbelievable and blah blah blah. And then I saw it and I was like, this kind of fits though. Like, this isn't shocking. This shouldn't really be shocking to anyone. I mean, Sabrina Carpenter dances around stage in like teeny little costumes as she can. There's like, go for it. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But all of her songs are centered around men. And she's absolutely has been and continues to cater to the like male gaze, if you want, even though most of her audience are actually women, but she definitely does cater to this kind of fantasy of how tiny she is. She always references how small she is, and I think she even referenced Lolita, which, if you don't know what Lolita is, it's a book written by Vladimir Nabokov, and it's basically about a man who's attracted to a child. And again, Lana Del Rey has a song called Lolita, so there you go. But anyway, what was I talking about? I can't remember. But I think that this album cover and I think it was like manufactured, like a marketing tactic to purposely get people to be annoyed. I think they knew. People were like, her team were so short-sighted. How could they not have possibly predicted that people would be so annoyed about this? And I'm like, but they knew that people, in my opinion, they knew that people would be annoyed, and they knew that it would cause loads of outrage, and they knew that hundreds of people would make TikToks and that it would blow up, and that's what they wanted. Like, how could they not have expected that? This is a woman who's like a multi-millionaire. She's like one of the biggest pop stars ever. Like, I'm sure she has an incredibly efficient and incredibly on the ball team, very, very clever people around her who know what they're doing. They're all probably marketing geniuses, and it's working. Whatever tactic they used, it's working. So this is the main reason why I kind of don't really care, because I feel like it is, first of all, it's a marketing tactic, and second of all, I can kind of see things from both sides as well. And usually I'm not a person who's like, can't we all just get along? Like, is there somewhere in the middle that we can meet? And usually I'm not that person at all. Usually I am so firm in my beliefs, and I'm so firm in my stance. And I usually don't really care about finding middle ground, especially with people who are just like, trying to kill me, or people who want me to not have the same rights as them. I'm not looking for middle ground with those people. But when it comes to this album cover, I can't really, I would be completely lying if I forced any sort of outrage. I'm so disgusted by this. This is absolutely horrible. And like, how dare she? And this is, that would be forced, and that would be fake. So I'm not going to do that. And it would be forced and fake of me if I pretended that I didn't understand why people were upset about this. So I can kind of understand both sides, but I'm kind of flip-floppy on this topic, or on this kind of opinion or whatever, because ultimately I believe that it doesn't really matter that much. That's why I'm just kind of like, don't really care. Meh, celebrity, don't really care. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so there's been talking about that. There's been some talking, and the people who are upset about this. There's a lot of people who are comparing the people who are upset about this, the feminists who are upset about this, saying that like Sabrina Carpenter is pushing us back, and she is like erasing so much of the work that feminism has done, and she is kind of like pushing us back, and she's erased like 100 years worth of feminism and stuff. I don't really believe that's true. I don't believe Sabrina Carpenter has the power to do that, and I don't believe that she is doing that. There's people who are comparing those people with conservatives. So if you think of like conservatism and like purity culture, and which has been on the rise obviously, and it's like forcing its way through society and media, especially in the last like year or two, as we can see, there's like the rise of the far right, the rise of conservatism, the rise of tradwife content, and women being pushed back into the kitchen, and forcing women to have all these babies. So there is like definitely a rise in like purity culture and conservatism. And people are comparing the feminists who are upset with Sabrina for being sexual. Some people are comparing those feminists with conservatism, saying that you basically have the same talking points as conservatives. You want women to be pure, and you don't want women to display any sexual expression. So, because through the eyes of conservatives, on their surface level, the part of themselves that they will display outwards, any display of female sexual expression is seen as harmful. However, we know that so many conservatives are dirty little freaks behind their wives' backs. We know that. But anyway, so just the conservative talking points and the conservative ideology or whatever is very much women should be modest. Femininity equals modesty. We know they're dirty little freaks. We know that. I know that. You know that. But just how they portray themselves and the ideas that they push is very much like femininity equals modesty. So when feminists start kind of repeating the same thing, people are having a problem with that. However, I think there's a difference between what was I going to say? I think there's a difference between being able to distinguish. I think that there's a big difference though. I have two talking points to make here. There's a difference between harmful displays of sexuality versus artistic expression. So when I think of harmful displays of sexuality, I think of people like Bonnie Blue. So if you don't know who Bonnie Blue is, she is a UK OnlyFans creator, and she like sleeps with all these men, like 100 men in a day, 1,000 men in a day. And at the moment she's doing something called a petting zoo, where she's basically like chaining herself up and opening herself up, and all these men just queue up and do whatever they want to her. So I could talk about this as well. This is another point. So when I see that display of sexuality, I think that's very, very harmful. I do think that that is hurting feminism, because these women will do things like that in the name of feminism, because it's my choice. I get to do what I want. And I'm like, that is not feminist, in my opinion. That is not feminist. That is not moving us forward in any way, shape or form. However, when I also, sorry, I'm going on all these side tangents because I don't have a script, and I'm just yapping. So we're just sitting here for a yap. Anyway, when I think about someone like Bonnie Blue, there's one Bonnie Blue, and for every one Bonnie Blue, there are thousands and thousands of men who are willing to queue up for her petting zoo, or who are willing to sign up to sleep with her with 1,000 other men in 24 hours. So there's one Bonnie Blue versus thousands and thousands and thousands of men queuing up. So I'm like, is Bonnie Blue the actual problem, or is it the thousands and thousands and thousands of men? It's obviously both, but one versus thousands, you know, one of these things is more than the other. So that's a whole other conversation for another day. So again, where was I going? Harmful displays of sexual expression versus artistic displays of sexual expression. Okay, so yes, in the eyes of conservatism, any display of sexual expression is harmful, because again, femininity equals modesty. To be feminine is to be covered up and to be modest. So my thing is, when we do see people expressing their, and I'm not trying to say that Sabrina Carpenter is displaying her sexuality in an artistic way. I'm not saying that. Like, maybe she is, maybe she's not. It's not up to me to decide that for her. But there are those are two different things: a harmful display of sexual expression versus an artistic display of sexual expression. You get the point. Anyway, my point with all of this is, when we do see people who are expressing their sexuality, when we do see people who are expressing their sexuality, and I always wonder, and I'm like, are you actually expressing your genuine, authentic sexual self because it is fun for you, it is actually pleasurable for you? Or are you embracing being sexualized? Those are two different things. Are you embracing your own sexuality, or are you embracing being sexualized? Are you genuinely expressing from a place of your own authentic pleasure, or are you convincing yourself that the idea of offering yourself up for male fantasies is pleasurable? Because those are two completely different things, and it's not up to me to police people or gatekeep people about, like, this is artistic, this is social conditioning, this is patriarchal conditioning that center the men at the women's expense, versus this is your own genuine authentic expression. It's not up to me or you to gatekeep which one of those is which. But I do like to, like, it's a good question to ask when we are in these conversations about women displaying sexuality, and who it's for and who benefits from it and why she's doing it in the first place. I've also heard people saying that it could be potentially very triggering for people who have survived DV, domestic violence, or abusive relationships. And I completely understand that, as someone who myself, I have, survived multiple forms of abuse at the hands of men. I personally don't find this triggering, but just because I don't find it triggering doesn't mean other people don't. However, I also feel like the world cannot really pad itself, and the world is not really like a soft and gentle place, especially for people who've been traumatized. And that's unfortunate. Like, it is really unfortunate that the world is very, very triggering, and the world is not trauma informed. The world is not out here with survivors and trauma on its mind, making sure that like people who've survived trauma are always going to be protected and always going to be kept safe. However, I completely understand why people are not happy with this album cover, because she could be promoting violence, or she could be promoting toxic relationships as well, which is not good, obviously. But I do kind of just come back to that I don't really have too many opinions on it, even though I've been speaking for like 17 minutes.
Sabrina Carpenter's album cover was effective satire. It would make men feel uncomfortable and women feel seen. It would use lighting, color, costuming, aesthetic to convey the role that women often feel put in as man's best friend in terms of being treated like a dog. It needed to be so subversive that men would not be able to gain pleasure from it or misinterpret it. She could have taken a risk and made herself look less desirable, ugly even. She could have put out an image that is so unsettling, so uncomfortable, that it forces us to examine the dynamics of servitude between men and women in relationships. At the end of the day, this album cover is basically a honeypot for any dominant male FetLife user. Her facial expression is amorous, yearning, sexy, desirable, and seems to be truly enjoying the position of submission that she's in. And while it's fine that women explore kink, submission, and sexuality, this is a strange juxtaposition against her music and the message that she sends as a critique generally of the way that men behave in relationships. I think the reason that people are having such a hard time with this and with criticizing it in general is because people like Sabrina Carpenter a lot more than they like Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is the woman that women have been trained and conditioned to hate, fear, and envy. Sabrina Carpenter came off funny, charming, sympathetic, and like a girl's girl. I need everybody to know it's okay to criticize people that you like, and that satire doesn't function as satire if it so closely mimics the very thing that it's trying to insult that you can't tell the difference. And as far as setting feminism back 100 years, I don't think Sabrina Carpenter has the power to do that. And I don't honestly think that people are even as upset as they think they are, or about the things that they think they are. Honestly, I just think it was a very weird, ambiguous choice, and the photo's just not that good and not that interesting.
That was, she's one of my favorite creators on TikTok. I'll leave her linked below. So that was just an interesting commentary. And yeah, Sabrina Carpenter, I completely agree with her. I hadn't actually watched that full video before I downloaded it, but I completely agree. I don't think Sabrina Carpenter has the power to set feminism back 100 years. I don't think so at all. And I actually do think it would have been more interesting for Sabrina to be the one holding a man's hair. I think that would have been, like, if you're going to lean into satire, then lean into satire, because I think if you have to explain that it's satire, then it isn't very good satire.
Hot take, but I don't care that Sabrina Carpenter's new album cover is misogynistic. That girl's doing the exact same thing she's been doing for a year and a half, and you guys were eating it up then. Totally valid to think the timing is in poor taste, but I find it fucking weird, the discourse around a 25-year-old pop star woman being far more critical than the discourse around the incels on the internet, your local government official, and ICE raiding the streets. It's cyclical and thematic to point all of this aggression at a young woman instead. Talk about whatever you want, but I have other things to criticize with my time, and all of them are men. Very, very fucking valid TikTok there that I also completely agree with. That yeah, it's there's so many things to criticize, there's so many things to talk about, which is why I didn't want to make a full video, and this has turned into an absolute full video now. It's like half an hour long, but yeah, it's like there's so many things going wrong and there's so many things to criticize. I do, however, think that, like, I care obviously so much about what's going on in Palestine, and that's obviously way more important than me talking about Sabrina Carpenter's album cover. However, I can talk about multiple things at the same time, and just because I'm making this video doesn't mean that I'm not also, like, you know, caring about Palestine and doing what I can do for, like, sharing content and sharing resources, sharing money, sharing links. Donate below in the GoFundMe that I'm helping to raise money for. I think I'm gonna have to take the sound off that, because it'll definitely be copyrighted. It's her new song, and it goes, "Is it stupid or is it slow?" It's the intro for her new Man-Child song, which is as predictable
yeah, again, just the like making fun of men kind of feminism. So it's a TikTok basically of a woman saying, why are we pretending like Sabrina Carpenter's music has ever been super deep, satirical, or feminist? Making fun of men does not equal uplifting women, by the way. And yeah, I think it's really fun to make fun of men sometimes. But I do not think that is where feminism ends. I think there's a lot more work to be done in feminism than just being like, men suck. Also, I came across these old ads from the 50s and the 60s, which very much obviously Sabrina Carpenter was replicating something similar in her album cover. And when you see the old ads with the women having their hair held up like that by men, and knowing that she's trying to replicate this kind of like 1950s kind of vibe and this like nostalgic kind of vibe, and it's like, okay, but can we replicate the 1950s like aesthetic without the, you know, the beatings from our husbands? Like, I don't know, is there a way to do that? Maybe let's do that. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to include those. There's a sad, unfortunate thing as well that I feel like people are saying, that how are we ever going to get men to respect us if people like Sabrina Carpenter keep making art like this and promoting this kind of like cutesy, not wearing any clothes, coming out in a towel and like flashing everyone, and well, not actually flashing, but you know what I mean. And how are we ever going to get past this? How are we ever going to get to a point where men respect us if we're if people like Sabrina Carpenter are creating albums with men holding their hair like this and pulling their hair? And I actually think that there's nothing we can do to convince men to treat us better. There's nothing we can actually do as women to convince men to like stop killing us and to stop hurting us. There's actually nothing we can do about that. And I think if you dress conservatively and you follow their ways of if you morph yourself into their ideal woman or whoever she is, a man who doesn't respect you will never respect you. If you do everything that you want, if he gives you a list of everything that he wants you to be and you become that, he still won't respect you. You have no control over how men decide to treat you. There's nothing you can do to earn the respect of a man who doesn't respect women, full stop. There's nothing you can do about that. So this kind of like blaming Sabrina for holding us all down as feminists, or like stopping or halting or like even reversing some of the work done by feminists, I don't really agree with that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm totally open to have my mind changed, because I don't really have a solid opinion on this, because ultimately I don't know if it's that important to talk about. And my last point that I wanted to make on this was that we never, ever, ever see men holding each other accountable the same way that we see women holding each other accountable. Why do we never see men policing each other and pulling each other up on stuff when they slip up? We never see that to the same degree that we see that with women. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to hold each other accountable, and it's a good thing to grow and to be in like healthy relationships. Also requires conflict resolution and stuff, and I know that like Sabrina's not going to see any of this, so it doesn't really matter, but it's just part of the larger kind of dialogue about women who hold each other accountable. And women are very, very quick to say like, oh, this is harmful, let's change course, let's veer off a little bit this way, or at least let's have a conversation about it. Think about Chris Brown. Chris Brown is selling out stadiums. I think he's coming to Dublin. I've seen ads on TikTok for the Chris Brown concert, and there's so many women in the comments from Dublin saying, I can't wait to get my tickets, I already got my tickets, can't fucking wait for Chris Brown. And I'm like, what? Like, what the hell? Like, people do not hold men to the same standard that we hold women. If a man had made an album cover and he was like, I don't know, I don't think it would have caused as much of an outrage if there was a man holding a woman's hair. And if I can't think of a single male artist, male singer, Hosier, well, he would never, I don't think he ever would do that. But just say if he did, if he was like, if there was a woman on the ground and he was holding up her hair, I actually don't think it would have caused like half of the outrage online And if it did cause any outrage online, it would be women talking about it. It wouldn't be men. It wouldn't be men saying, hey, bro, this isn't a good thing to do. Or like, hey, bro, maybe we shouldn't do this. Or maybe this isn't exactly the most ideal way to treat women. It would be women speaking about it. It wouldn't be men. So that's kind of the last thing I think I want to say about it. Anyway, maybe I'll just leave the video there. I did not mean for it to be this long at all. I'm just such a fucking yapper. As soon as I start opening my mouth, I only had one page, like a half document of notes, but every time I say one thing, it kind of leads me on to the next point. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Short and sweet.